because there is in Ukraine such occasion that personally I was really surprised and appreciated that there exist a lot of volunteers and advocacy organizations in the US, and they much more united and active, I see, and I've been to Washington and met with such volunteers and people and that origin from Ukraine, and my opinion that they are more united and more active than our citizens in Ukraine. So I'd like to show this situation in order to maybe give our people, our Ukrainians that live in Kyiv in Ukraine, that human. You must be more active and more correspond with such soldiers and so on, because people from abroad make more activity and donations, and you stay on the other side. So that was my aim in order to make a range of such notes.
Okay.
So, and I watched you on Facebook, and you originated a group, 1 million people around the world support Ukraine, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
So it's also, as I see, it's a volunteer non-profit organization, or is it just a union, someone?
Well, we're in the process of becoming an NGO, and
I see.
one of the goals is that the NGO has like a non-profit division. Not necessarily because we want to really take money in to use the United States, but we want to be able to give people the tax write-off and collect the money. So and then have part of the reason why I'm here too is like I just spent a couple days with this lady who runs a small little charity in Brovary, which is where I was.
Yeah.
Is I know a lot of these people from online, but I want to meet them face to face, so that a lot of people ask me, hey Ed, I have money, I want to support soldiers, I want to support
directly.
Yeah, orphans, who do you trust? So because they're Americans, we want to have an American charitable group set up so that we can issue them a receipt. Then we also want to be able to take that money and then direct it to nonprofits that are operating here in Ukraine, so that we know the money's going to a good place, and we can feel confident that we're not ruining our good name by when somebody says, hey, I would like to support this type of activity. We feel good about not worrying about the money getting used for erroneous purposes.
They get directly and have a feedback, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Because
So I mean, we have a lot of the contacts already, but the thing is that there's nothing that replaces like what we're doing, meeting somebody face to face.
Yeah, so in Ukraine it's there is such a situation that a lot of volunteers and a lot of funds they have been created, and they began their activity in a good way, but much more funds they exist only in order to collect money and to spread without any activity and without any real aid and real medicine and so on. So.
Well, some things, as you know, because it's expensive to ship certain items.
Yeah.
Certain items it's better to send money, but certain items it's better to send the actual thing.
$10,000 in order to ship a container, yeah?
Yeah, big one, yeah. So I mean, it's that's kind of where we have to be smart about how that's collected. But it's also like we do a lot of, you said about activity. We have. Protests in multiple cities. We kind of want to be like the modern day. We call it UKRAINIAN, which is Ukrainian Congressional Committee. That's a great organization, but from my experience, a lot of the people that are running that are kind of very set in their ways, and we want to kind of duplicate that, except do it in more of a modern way by having chapters that are all across the country, but not necessarily being too concerned about, okay, well, we don't have to have a meeting that nobody attends once a month anyway. I'd rather have, online meetings, webinars, take advantage of all the technology, because it's a lot easier when people can sit in the comfort of their own home and log in and join a video conference or a chat as opposed to driving a half an hour someplace. So that's kind of where we ultimately want to be. And then over here, I want to let, Ukrainians all across the country know that they're not by themselves, even though it feels like they are, that there is a lot of support out there. But from what I've seen, the only people that seem to be aware of it are the people that are directly receiving. A lot of people who are right next door to where it's going don't even have a clue. Because I think of a lot of people, if people knew more about what was going on, I think that alone would lead to more support here locally. That being said, obviously the financial situation is not as nearly as good as it is back home, but people can still do something, and if a lot of people do a little bit, it can add up to a lot of money.
And the organizations spread all over the US, or they exist only in separate states?
Well, we're going to set up in the US, but there's going to be ultimately kind of like a worldwide type of thing, because we have members in like pretty much almost every country you can imagine. Now, I don't think that certain countries are going to be as active, because we don't have thousands of people in every country, but I mean we have 50, 60, 70 people in almost every country you can imagine. And I constantly, even when I went to the pub, I signed the guy up right there.
Yeah?
They were from Norway.
Oh.
He asked me about the shirt, and I tell everybody, I tell every single person wherever I go.
Such a close world.
Yeah. So the world's gotten a lot smaller, I think, and that's I'm just taking advantage of the technology that's available.
Yes, and it's really united, not 5 or 10 years ago you write a letter and feedback maybe at least 1 or 2 months, and now you can tens of 10,000 and so on people to get. And in Ukraine you don't have any representative office or...
Not yet, but I mean we have people, we just haven't actually given them like the official banner and all that stuff yet. Yeah, we want to award, like when we become official, we want to have like T-shirts and hats and kind of like the way if you were setting up a political office, but it's a support group, but so that we can identify with people identify with that picture that's in the group.
And they know where to go and where to knock the door.
Yeah, when we have we have a lot of people who are here in Kyiv. Like I've gotten some exposure because I wrote a couple articles back home for Fox News, and they were republished here in the Kyiv Post.
Oh, right.
So they kind of pay attention. Like there's a lot of organizations that kind of pay attention to what we do. And Fox News in the United States is huge network. Like millions of people watch. So, as we get bigger and bigger and bigger, we're getting more and more exposure, and more and more people are finding out about what's happening.
That's a little bit of problem, because in order to there exist some widespread organizations, maybe representatives and so on, because I personally, when I had a trip to Washington, and the founder of the forum, US Ukraine Foundation, they have a representative office in Kyiv, Ukraine. And about the existence of this office, I knew only in Washington when I watched the structure.
Yeah.
And so my activity maybe in any way corresponds with the activity of the representative office, and from maybe some skills I can add to it there without any funding, without any donations, and that's a problem, because it's widespread and not so much communication. And besides, even on the forum, all participating organizations, they after the forum they also they gathered, and in order to cooperate their activity, because one and.
Well, that's actually part of what we're trying to do too, because there's a lot of support going on, but it's more fractured. It's not, the people aren't really working together with each other. So I think a lot of what we're trying to do is not necessarily add to that, but bring everybody in a spot together so that everybody can coordinate with everybody else. Kind of want to be almost like like the morning paper worldwide for Ukrainians, except electronically.
Yeah.
To where like Ukrainians think, okay, let me go into 1 million and see what's going on that I need to know. Where they can go in and maybe 5 minutes and kind of get updated on what's happening all around the world
even in my opinion, such occasion to collect such container and money for it. One organization collects maybe 50 kilograms and so on and so on, and they don't need each and separate to collect for a container on a part, so they can, and the expenditures for shipping is much more.
That's right.
So
and then we're also trying to gather. I've actually met with congressmen and senators and got them to join the Ukrainian caucus like immediately. I found out that the White House actually has people that are like they get our talking points for when they talk about Ukraine like once a week. Like they read our group. John McCain knows about our group. We actually helped our group pass the Ukrainian Freedom Support Act 2014 by making a lot of phone calls to the South Dakota senator who was putting. I put out a call to the group to do this, and they made 600 phone calls in 2 hours. And he got so aggravated that he's all right already. I'll vote for it. The problem is we never thought that the president would actually not act on it. Nobody ever, the bill passed, but nobody ever thought that he would just sit on his hands and not,
I had a meeting with assistants of, his name is George
Barrios? Yeah, I know. He's on our group. I know him.
Well, and I had after the forum, Maidan Minnesota called me and called him, and I said them before the beginning of the forum that I'd like to make an article, especially in the focus of organization and of the Act 2828, and so they directly moved me to George, and he had me an interview about an hour, so he such a great interviewer, and so I tried to find something on the web, and I found one article about this act and support, and it was that article personally he published, so no information in local, in huge mass media, nothing, and besides, George said that no one from our officials, especially Poroshenko and Prime Minister and so on, no one from the year of such activities, no one went to Washington, had no meeting and so on. Poroshenko once came to Obama in order to take a picture as he was elected like a president. And it's so great sorrow as for me, as for person, as for citizen of Ukraine, that no one cares, especially in such high levels as our officials. And it's really sorrow because senators and people in US they give much more activities and their skills in order to help the country that personally doesn't respond directly to, because George is half Vietnam and half Ukrainian, so he even doesn't speak Ukrainian, a little bit Russian, but he's was involved greatly in this process, and that was great.
He participated in the march that I led in February. That was actually made it to Ukrainian television, so I heard, where we marched from the White House to the Lincoln Memorial, and we gave a bunch of speeches there. But I mean, it was, to me, it should have been a lot more people. It's hard even back home getting, but ultimately what I'm trying to do is address exactly what you just said. It's like, it's like the United States is here, not just the United States, Canada and Europe too, but Ukraine is here, and they need to be like two puzzle pieces need to intersect. So we want to be like a liaison, because one of the things that I have is that I happen to know, because of what I've done the last couple of years, a lot of people all over the United States and all over the world, and then I also happen to know a lot of people in Ukraine from all different areas, the military, the government, activists, people who help children, people who run orphanages, people who are involved in almost every refugee, so you name it, and I can communicate with these people.
Different groups. Yeah.
So I have like a lot of people, I have a lot of people who I talk to that I think are very unique, where a lot of people will talk to this group, and a lot of other people will talk to this group, but there's not a lot of people that will talk to both.
Yeah.
So, that's what I'm trying to do. I know it's a big task, but that's probably going to take a while, but I think that's the biggest thing that needs to take place. Because we hear the same thing in the United States, that United States politicians don't care enough about Ukraine, and then we hear that when I come here that Ukrainian politicians don't care enough about Ukraine either. So it's almost like, well, who goes first, right? And I understand it's Ukraine's country, but Ukraine is also being attacked, and there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of misinformation, and that causes people to kind of just do this and just focus on what's in front of them and what affects them directly day in, day out. Like their kids, their job, their house, stuff, things like that, from my experience.
A personal corner.
Yeah, and don't really get too global in their thinking.
I see. And personally for you, are you Ukrainian or?
Well, I'm 50%, although the other half is not Vietnamese, like George. The other half is Czech, Irish, German. There might be a little bit else in that. It's on my mother's side, but my father is 100% Ukrainian.
Oh, nice.
And so is his parents. They're both deceased now. Lemko is our echo, yeah. So I've always been very, very interested, and I've always followed it. But as a person who was growing up and younger, and what can I do? Right, I'm 5,000 miles away. What can I really do to make? Well, to me, the whole social media thing just was like an eye opener to me, and I just basically been running with it ever since.
And what was the trigger, the final?
Well, I mean, ultimately it was what happened, with the Heavenly 100 last year. But that's what launched the group. But I mean, I've been very interested in following things basically since the Orange Revolution in '04, and then before that too. But that was kind of reignited things. That was the year that I turned like 32, so I was just kind of starting to get out of my, immature part of my life. But last year, I mean, I just launched the group basically more out of just frustration than anything else. Because since somebody's got, I watched everything online as it happened. I still can't believe what I saw. I can only imagine what it was like being here.
Yeah, no one could believe that Crimea could be another separate.
Yeah, well, I watched that military base, when they went to the outside, and when they basically just, the Ukrainian Navy guys just basically left. I saw that whole thing with the camera, and all that.
And what is, in your opinion, what are the further steps of our neighbor, Russia? Can you something predict?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Russia's going to give back control of the border like they said in Minsk do. I mean, they're proven liars. If they weren't, there wouldn't be a Minsk 2. There'd only be Minsk 1. So I think ultimately it's going to lead to more bloodshed. Unfortunately, I don't see how it's going to end. I just heard before we were walking back that apparently it's been confirmed that Turkey did shoot down that Russian jet.
Oh.
That's a fact.
Today?
Yeah. Well, they did it a couple days ago, but it was a rumor.
Oh.
But apparently it's been confirmed it's actually happening. So that's not...
So they spread their activities in Turkey.
Yeah, I actually, I think that Putin has very little respect for our president back home, and I think he views, because we have an election next November, the next, 13, 14 months as kind of his last opportunity to kind of flex his muscle a little bit. Because I think no matter who gets elected, they're going to have a much stronger viewpoint towards dealing with Putin than we have now. Simply because I don't think we could have any person who's more pacifist. I mean, I know what he's trying to do, but I always say, if a bully keeps taking your lunch every day, the answer isn't to just give him a different sandwich. At some point, you got to punch him in the nose, just to stand up and show that you're willing to do it. So I think we will get there sooner or later, because I think Putin realizes that his country is in big trouble. I mean, he's basically destroyed his own economy while he's been attacking Ukraine.
Yeah.
You know, their currency is down just as bad as the hryvnia is. The ruble is, or if we turn the ruble to rubble, has already kind of happened.
Yeah, they took the money from the pension funds and give to Crimea in order to participate.
But that can't last forever. You know, that's eventually going to run out. Yeah. I mean, part of the reason why I'd like to have this happen sooner than later is I think Ukraine is ultimately going to be fine, but you know, how many lives are going to have to be lost in the process? You know, sooner than later is definitely the way to go.
How about